Gentlemen, what the world has been waiting for, what the world needs now, the one, the only, amazing, original, Johnny Blaze. Often imitated, but never duplicated. There's Johnny.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all to the amazing original Johnny Blaze Show. It's always great to be here, as I blaze right in with my karate kid. Let's have a blazing hot fun time. Ever since I was a child, I was told to do good deeds for others. Today I gave up my seat on the bus to a blind man. Unfortunately, my bus driving career came to a crashing end. Two boys found a $20 bill in the schoolyard, and they decided whoever could tell the biggest lie would get to keep the money. The school principal overheard the boys and confronted them. "You boys should be ashamed of yourselves," he said. "When I was your age, I didn't even know what a lie was." And so the boys handed the money back over to him. A husband was driving his wife home when the police pulled him over. One of the cops asked him, "Do you realize how fast you were going?" "Show me your driver's license." "I don't have one," the man said. "Don't listen to him," the wife interrupted. "He's a liar when he's drunk. I told him we wouldn't get far in the stolen car." Just then there was a knock from the trunk and a voice said, "Are we over the border yet?" The husband told the cop, "The faster you arrest me, the sooner I can escape from my wife and kid brother." I don't see the point of going to strip clubs anymore. I can get frustrated and lose just as much money staying home and writing checks to my ex-wife. A man was diagnosed with terminal cancer and given 6 months to live. Then one day, while he was in the hospital, the doctor told him, "There's not a trace of cancer in your body anymore. Your recovery is a miracle." "Thank God," the man replied. "Then I don't have to pay you." We have a blazing hot fun show with a special guest. He is a multi-talented podcast host, a TV and stage concert producer, and a comedy club owner and writer. So please give a big warm welcome and say hello to the one and only Scott Edwards.
Hey, Johnny, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Scott. Can you hear me?
Sound okay?
Thank you, Scott. Welcome to the amazing original Johnny Blaze Show.
I'm just so excited. I was really here to meet Bill.
Oh, really? You gave me a funny there, Scott. You got a great sense of humor already. Yeah. We're gonna have a blazing hot fun time here, Scott.
All right, we're ready.
Okay, great. Scott, I was wondering, how did you get started in entertainment? Give me a rundown. Tell me the Scott Edwards story. How did you get started in entertainment, and where are you from?
I'm in Sacramento, California, and pretty much born and raised in Northern California. And I started my first company at age 17. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I just keep opening business after business after business.
Well, that's phenomenal. You started young, didn't you, Scott?
17, yeah. I started a small construction company called A&A Restripe. We painted the lines in parking lots, and I had a couple partners. One of those partners and his children are still running that company today, some 45, almost 50 years later.
Wow. So you did complete construction, all about construction and that?
It was parking lots and painting. We were just kids, but we called ourselves a construction company.
Okay, well, better construction than destruction, that's for sure.
Exactly.
You want to build, not tear down, but build up, build people up. That's for sure.
Exactly.
There you go. I like that, Scott. So you're wrapped up with the construction. Now, after you did the construction company, tell me about how did you get any other jobs that you did and before getting into entertainment, and talk to me about all those experiences.
I've done a whole bunch of different things. After the construction company, I'm an older guy. I was involved in the music industry and disco. Remember disco?
Oh, yeah. It was very popular in the past.
And then after that, in 1980, I opened the 12th full-time comedy club in the United States, a club called Laughs Unlimited. And that club is still operating today. I sold it in 2001, but it's still operating today. So it's been open over 42 years.
That's a long time. I like that title, Two Laughs Unlimited.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity to work with some amazing people.
So where and when did you when you opened up the Laughs Unlimited? Where was it located? And
it's in the tourist area in It's called Old Sacramento, but it's a tourist area of Sacramento, the capital for the state.
Oh, really?
Now you're down south, right?
Yeah, I'm over here in Northridge in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay, all right. I'll talk slower.
That's okay. You're doing fine. So what motivated you to get you into Laughs Unlimited? Was that just your idea, or did you have somebody that motivated, inspired you for that?
No, it was kind of a cool story. So I was selling life insurance as a 23-year-old and absolutely hated it. I was pretty good at sales, but I didn't like life insurance. When you're young, you don't think you're ever going to die. So I was on vacation in LA with my then girlfriend, soon to be wife, soon to be ex-wife. Oh. And my dad, who's got a great sense of humor, said, "Hey, you got to go over to the Comedy Store and check out this room." It was a satellite room of the Comedy Store in Westwood, LA, just off of UCLA campus. You been over there?
Oh, yeah.
And I went in and saw Dave Coulier, Sandra Bernhardt, George Wallace, a bunch of talent. And stand-up comedy wasn't really a known thing, especially outside of San Francisco or LA or New York or Boston. But in a small town like Sacramento, I mean, it was like, wow, this is incredible entertainment. So I stayed all night. I met the comics. I was picking their brain. And the whole 6-hour drive back in my head, I was like, what am I going to do to make this happen and get out of life insurance and start my path on comedy? And that's, was what I was able to do, was wheel and deal my way into the banquet room of a restaurant and quit my job. I went bankrupt and wrote off a whole $2,800. Don't ever do that. And made a deal for a banquet room for free. I didn't have to pay any lease. The only deal was that they had banquets during the day. I'd have to tear down the banquet, set up my comedy club, work the door, MC the show, and then after my show, tear down my comedy club. Wow. And I did that by myself for several months. Eventually, some friends started helping out. And about 1.5 years, 2 years later, I opened my own brick and mortar showroom.
Wow, that's really interesting. You're able to do it yourself, completely, everything.
Oh, I've started over a dozen companies, and I always do it by the seat of my pants, and they don't all succeed, actually. Lost my share of money, too.
Well, but you're a survivor, and you've obviously made money, too, besides lose. Sometimes you got to fall down before you get yourself back up, right?
Exactly. Failures are the stepping stones to success.
I agree. Yeah. They'll say quitters never win and winners never quit. That's right. Once you give up, you're finished. That's for sure.
Exactly.
And don't listen to anybody. People say, I wanted to have doing those things, and I never did it. As Bob Proctor said, do it while you can, when you're healthy and you're happy. What the mind can believe, the mind can achieve, right?
Exactly. And I was a little stranger than the average. When I was doing well, I ended up having 3 comedy clubs. I opened 2 independent restaurants, both with live music. I had 3 art galleries. I bought a submarine, and I had a beach shack in Hawaii. So when I had the money coming in, I was doing all kinds of adventures.
So you didn't just rely on the one club, you had many others. Wow.
Yeah, I was building a small empire in my own head.
That's phenomenal. So how did you go about promoting these? I'm sure you didn't do it all. I mean, you did most of it yourself. You probably had some help too. It's hard to do everything at once.
No. By the time the other companies came along, I had established a very successful comedy club. At one point, I had 125 employees. I had a couple business partners. I had an amazing staff and lots of support. And some of the things I went into made money, others didn't. But it was always a fun adventure.
It sounds like it. What about it? So what about it made it successful and made you stand out and make it different in these clubs?
Well, I think what was
it?
the reason I was a success was that I opened in August of 1980, which was before the big wave of stand-up comedy acceptance. People didn't know that was really an art form, and there were people out there. And I got a chance to work with people, amazingly funny people, before they were famous. My very first act on stage, I paid him $150 for a full week of work. It was his first gig out of his hometown of Phoenix, Arizona, was Gary Shandling.
Really?
Yeah. And then the next week, my second headliner was Bob Saget, and he and Dave Coulier worked together for me many times. And Bob actually was really Bob and Dave Coulier and Bob Saget and George Wallace really gave me a lot of the foundation to what made my club a huge success, and that they shared what worked and what didn't work and how to treat the comics and what to charge the people, really laid out a blueprint to running a comedy club, and it helped me do success. Bob Saget personally, as just as a favor to me, wrote and acted in 2 TV commercials. One, he hits me with my own car, and the other, he throws me off the roof of a building.
That's funny. Wow.
Yeah, they were the first TV commercials I produced back in that was probably about 1984. Bob still wasn't famous, but he was a very, very talented guy and a great soul, and he really helped my club go big in Sacramento.
It sounds like it. How were you able to be so fortunate to meet such a successful comic? He was a wonderful guy. It's a shame he died so young, Bob Saget, but I mean, he did so many things. I mean, America's Funniest Home Videos and Full House, and you name it, he did it. And he
but his first love was stand-up comedy, and a lot of people don't know because it didn't come up after he was famous, but he was a pretty talented comic musician. He loved to play guitar on stage, and the way I met him was, I think I mentioned when I was at the Comedy Store in Westwood, I met Dave Coulier. Dave Coulier introduced me to Gary Shandling and Bob Saget, and George Wallace, who led to Ray Romano, and it goes on and on. Jerry Seinfeld was a regular at my room.
Really?
In fact, Jerry had to cancel a week when he got the Seinfeld show. He went and did the first year, and he called me up and he goes, "Hey, I owe you a week," which was really, unexpected and by Hollywood terms. And he came back and worked a weekend for me for the same money I was paying him on the gig he canceled. And at this point, he had his own sitcom, so that was really unusual. Usually the guys, when they get a big show like that, they don't go backwards. They want to keep their career moving forward. But Jerry felt like he owed me, and he came back and did a show, and that was amazing of him.
That's really something. If you could be networking and meet one person, and then one person introduces you to others, and before you know it's a snowball for success. You're meeting from one to another to another.
Exactly. And Johnny, it was so great because once the club got established, as you know, being in Southern California, when you're performing at Dimples or some of these other places, you never know who's going to be in the audience, right? If you're within a drive of Hollywood, there could be some director or producer. What was great about my club in Sacramento, what I call the fringe of show business, comics could come and perform and try out and write material at my club, knowing that, no director or producer or casting person is going to see them. So it gave them the freedom to experiment and learn and build their craft.
They get a lot of great experience that way.
Yeah, it was, in fact, a quick side story, if you got time, Johnny.
Well, yeah, tell me about I was going to ask you about some of the funny stories that you have with your comics and your experiences. Yeah, tell me about that.
Early on, in fact, in 1982, might have been 1981, I think, actually, 81, Bob Saget was working for me, and a friend of his had a sitcom and needed to work on a character, a stand-up comedy character, and asked if he could come up and open the show for a week just to kind of learn what being a comic was. And that actor came up and worked my club for a whole week, and Bob taught him how to act on, I helped him with material, and I showed him, where to look and use of the microphone and stuff. But together, Bob Saget and I gave him a real sense of what it's like to be a stand-up comic. And that actor was Tom, and Tom went on to, he was on Bosom Buddies at the time. I'm talking about Tom Hanks.
Really?
Was on Bosom Buddies at the time. And the set that he developed at my club, we saw 3 weeks later on the Bosom Buddies show. And it was, Tom was a great success doing comedy then. And of course, many, many years later, he did the movie about stand-up comedy. But this was early on. But I had Tom Hanks on my stage.
That's spectacular. It really is. Tom Hanks has done so many. Oh boy, he's he's done Forrest Gump. You name it, he's done it. The Philadelphia Story.
Really diverse. How did you get into being such an Elvis fan? You look so young.
I think Elvis was he was my idol and inspiration. Well, everybody liked the King. Thank you very much. You're a great, awesome audience. Oh yeah. A friend of mine gave me that button. Yeah.
He was born in 1935, which would make him about 87 now if he had lived. Right. And I think that he's a great icon for music and movie entertainment. He always made sure, whether it was a concert or a movie, that the audience was engaged and having a good time. Elvis was definitely a great entertainer. In fact, my wife's fixing me some fried peanut butter and bananas right now just to get into the feeling of it all.
I wish I could have met the King. It wasn't meant to be. The concerts were so loud. Plus, I didn't want to go by myself. But I had the honor and privilege of working with a producer who knew Elvis well. Him and his partner, the man's name is Chris Beard. Him and his partner, Alan Bly, wrote the 68 Comeback, the comedy for that show, where Elvis was wearing his black leather jacket and pants at NBC. And he was surrounded by his cronies, DJ Fontana, on drums, and Scotty Moore on the lead guitar. They were reminiscing about the early days when they first started in show business. When Elvis was they found him with doing That's All Right, Mama. When Sam Phillips said, well, if I can find a white man with a black sound, I can make millions. And he found it with Elvis. And so it was his comeback. That was his comeback at NBC, the 68 Comeback.
Wow. Well, you had a great Elvis impersonator on just last week, right?
I was just going to mention, yes, I did. I had one of the top Elvis tribute artists in the world. You probably saw him. His name is James King Crook. I was going to wear this button then, but my friend, he misplaced the button. Now he was able to get it for me now. But James King Crook is phenomenal. I mean, he's played all over the place. He even knew Linda. He knows Linda Thompson. He was a living girlfriend of Elvis. She lived with him for 4.5 years. And he met her, and he also met Lisa Marie Presley, too.
Wow. And well, it looks like I've seen you on stage doing Elvis. It looks like you have fun, especially with the karate.
Yes, that's great. Yes, I did. I was the winner of the Gong Show doing Elvis, and someone said it can't be done. You're wrong. You're going to get gong. I said, you're wrong. I'm going to win, and I did. I had Patty Andrews of the Andrews Sisters, Mabel King of What's Happening, Sweet Louie of the Checkmates were on the panel. And then the Chris Beard I was telling you about, the 68 Comeback, the MB who wrote the comedy, him as partner Alan Bly, the producer I work with, he said, we know what you can do, when he saw me win, when it couldn't be done. And then they called me back to have some television specials doing. It was a comedy parody on Elvis. I had a whole show dedicated to me, Johnny Blaze Day, where I took over I kissed the woman, shook the guy's hand, and I was put up on the shoulders like the winning touchdown. They ran out of time because they only had so much time to do it, singing Jailhouse Rock. And that was Johnny Blaze Day. I don't know if you had a chance to see these. They're on my website on johnnyblaze.com. And
well, what an exciting career, and you're having fun doing a tribute to somebody that you really enjoyed. And I think that a lot of lay people don't understand, why do people do stand-up comedy? And of course, most of us have bad childhoods and stuff, but and are insecure. But really, it's engaging with an audience. And every time you're in front of a new group of people, a new group of strangers, the challenge is to connect with them. So for you, whether it's an impression or music, or for a couple shows back, you had a great singer on, or a comic like Ellen DeGeneres, when she worked my club, she was just a featured act.
Really?
And the goal of any of those entertainers is to grab the audience's attention, keep them focused and engaged, and then entertain them. Another one of the regulars at my club that was very successful at that was Ray Romano, and a very funny guy on stage. And of course, when he turned his act into a TV show after doing the Tonight Show, huge success. So we were able to be kind of the launching pad, more of a training camp, I should say. Laughs Unlimited was kind of like going to college before, making it to going for your doctorate. Only a few people got the golden ticket and became famous, but thousands of comics worked my club, and some went to corporate comedy, some went into acting, some went into writing comedy and material, Saturday Night Live and movies. I just did a great interview with Ed Solomon, who was a stand-up comic for me as an opening act and then a featured act. And he ended up writing Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure series, the Men in Black series, Now You See Me series. I mean, he's a multimillionaire and has a home in England and a home here. And it all started from stand-up comedy.
Well, you're not talking about the man that did the Ed Sullivan Show. Are you introduced to Elvis amongst all kinds of other acts like?
No, Ed
you're
Solomon.
Talking about Ed Sullivan. No.
Yeah, no. Ed Solomon was a young.
Oh,
Jewish
it's Ed Solomon,
comic.
not Sullivan. Okay.
Yeah, no. But if you check all those movies, you'll see that he was the writer, the head writer for all those movies. He's a very talented guy and was a terrific interview. What's great, I'm sure you enjoy about podcasting, is it gives you a chance to interact with people that have similar interest in you.
Well, yes, I agree. You do, and it's fun. It's fun because you're talking to people that are right, similar interests, and you have more in common with each than with somebody than just a common cold. And you try to have you're not identical, but you come from varied backgrounds, and you just try to give it your all and put a lot of chutzpah and a lot of charisma into it. Elvis used to say in every of his performances, I got to satisfy my audience, because everybody that comes it's a new audience and they must be pleased. And so he was always, that's the way he was. He was so charismatic and he put everything in. He was really nervous before he would do his shows. You do want to.
Yeah, a lot of entertainers. I'll tell you a story that a lot of people may not believe, but I had a chance to have at my club twice some incredible talents, but Robin Williams was one of the special acts. And Robin, when he's on stage, there's just so much adrenaline and so much energy, and he is just, firecracker type material coming off the Rolodex in his head, just a genius when it came to comedy. But when he was backstage, he was very shy, he was very quiet, he loved hanging out with other comics, he didn't really want the fanfare and the cameras and the fans. He was a shy, quiet guy and really nice and down to earth. Off stage, on stage, he was an out of control maniac.
So what you're saying is they can be different in person, and once they get on stage, then their personalities completely change. They become a different person, totally.
Yeah, and Johnny, it's not just young comics. I was very blessed to get invited to Red Skelton's 100th birthday, and to celebrate, they had 100 clowns there. It was amazing. But Red Skelton, of course, was very old, and they wheeled him out in a wheelchair, and I could have swore he was already dead. I mean, he just looked horrible. And they did some introductions and gave him some awards and gave him some praise. And they said, ladies and gentlemen, Red Skelton. And they helped him up. And as soon as he took hold of the microphone, you would have thought lightning had struck. All of a sudden, he's awake, he's sharp, he's doing jokes, he's interacting with the audience, and did probably 5 minutes of material and thanked everybody. And at the end, he said, God bless, sat down, and it was like he was dead again. I mean, the energy and the adrenaline that stand-up comedy or performing gives somebody it just can't be beat in any other way. It's amazing. And I'm sure Elvis felt that too. Woo!
There's so many impersonators, often imitated but never duplicated. There's so many Elvis tribute artists, not just the one that I was fortunate to get him on, because a lot of these Elvis tribute artists, when you try to reach out to them, they appreciate it, but they're already booked. So you don't, Fortunately, a friend of mine and I saw him at Dimples that time, back in 2008. He was doing a party. I didn't see him anymore after that, but he reached out to him, and a guy remembered him. He said, "Would you like to have an Elvis tribute artist on your show?" I said, "I'd love to." They're hard to get, and sure enough, I was able to get them, and that's
Well,
cool.
considering you're being such a big fan of Elvis and doing some impressions as Johnny Blaze yourself, I'm sure it was the perfect guest, and I know your audience enjoyed it, Johnny.
Well, thank you, Scott. I feel you're an excellent guest because you have so much personality, a nice smile, and you have such experience of so many different famous and entertaining comics that are really successful. They've been given on-the-job training, and then they went from there, from starting to all the way. A lot of them opening up their own shows and everything.
And I just want to be clear that, yeah, many of them went on to fame and fortune in their own sitcoms. One of my regulars back in the 80s was Jay Leno, and ended up doing several sold-out concerts with him. And, of course, you know, he's pretty famous now. But there's a lot of acts, thousands of acts, you know, Steve Bruner, Jeff Jenna, Tim Bedore, Bob Worley, Bobby Slayton, Tom McTeague, I can go on and on and on, Jazz Kaner, that made a great career in stand-up comedy, but were never famous. And there's so many people, it's like musicians, Johnny, I'm sure you can relate. There's a lot of musicians that have a great career performing music, but they're not going to be the next Elvis or the next Garth Brooks. There's only a few people can get that that golden ticket, that piece of fame. But there's thousands of other people that are very talented and entertained a lot of audiences. Wouldn't you agree?
I do agree with you, Scott. Even if you don't become the next Elvis or Garth Brooks or Frank Sinatra or whatever, or the Beatles, if you're having fun with it and you're entertaining people and you're doing well in your life, I guess that's success, right?
Oh, exactly. And you know, it never starts off. It's so funny, Johnny, you may know this, but a lot of people think that there's such a thing as an overnight success. I mean, I was just telling the story about Tom Hanks trying to learn how to be a stand-up comic on my stage back in 1981 so he could do it on Bosom Buddies, which is, most people wouldn't remember that he was the star of that show. It was so long ago. But he had acted his whole life. Now he's a famous actor, but he had done thousands of roles. Well, I'm probably exaggerating, hundreds of roles before then. A lot of these comics that are famous, you know, Seinfeld, Leno, Williams, some of these people you mentioned, it wasn't like somebody flipped a switch and all of a sudden they were famous. They spent years and thousands of times on stage to hone their craft, to learn their trade, and to be able to engage an audience the way that we're talking about. Even Ellen DeGeneres worked as an opening act and a featured act at clubs all over the country before she got her shot at fame. But my point of the story, Johnny, was that it's a learning process. So I was mentioning Gary Shandling was, he went from opening act to headliner pretty quick at my club. And he let me know that he was going to be on the Tonight Show coming up in a week. And could he try out some new material? And I go, man, anything you want, Gary. He knew how to entertain an audience. And I got to tell you, he went out and he did like 20 minutes of his stuff and just had the audience in the palm of his hand. And then he stopped and he looked at the audience, and it was a Thursday night, maybe 80 people in the room. And he said, look, everybody, I'm going to be on the Tonight Show next week, next Thursday. It was like a week later. I need to try out some new material. Is that okay with you? And the audience is like, wow, this is like behind the scenes, you know, pull back the curtain. You know, what's it like? And he pulled out these 3x5 cards, Johnny, and one by one read jokes or material off these cards, right? And so he'd try a joke, and if the audience just tittered or didn't respond, he'd go, well, that's out. And then if one got a really good response, it goes, okay, I'm going to work on that one. And then in the shows following that, you knew that the ones he picked out, he just kept working on. And then we heard that material the next Thursday on the Tonight Show. So even when it looks like it's impromptu, there's rehearsals and practice and a lot of writing involved.
It's not easy. To be a stand-up comic, you have to have, your material has to be just right. Your delivery has to be just right. The right kind of material. You have to memorize it. I don't know. You have to be different at all times. They make it look so easy, but it's not easy. It's very It is really difficult.
Yeah, as I alluded to earlier, what's unique about the art form, I feel, and you can agree or disagree, Johnny, but for a musician, they go out and they play the same songs over and over, and it doesn't matter if it's a drunk, angry audience or a great audience. People are trained since birth that when a song ends, you applaud. Well, that sucked, but he made an effort. You still react, right? Comedy's different. If comedy is not going over, the audience tells you, they let you know, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what's difficult about stand-up comedy is whether you have a drunk audience or you're in the back of a laundromat or in front of 2,000 people at a paid concert, every audience is different. And what makes stand-up comics so special and like actors is that even though they've done a joke 100 times, 1,000 times, it sounds like they just thought of it, right? And they're adapting their material to the audience because the whole goal of an entertainer is to engage with an audience, right? An actor can go out and rehearse and practice and do the lines that somebody else, William Shakespeare wrote, and it doesn't matter if the audience likes it or not because he's just the actor. Shakespeare wrote it, right? The comic, it's his material, his presentation, and his butt on the line every night he goes on stage. I have so much respect for stand-up comics.
I agree with you because they write their own material, or maybe they get it from other people, but they have to have great timing, and they have to remember it. They have to put, there's so much feeling involved in it, and it has to be just right. It has to be something that people love, and once they get started laughing, they continue to laugh more and more. If they will let people know if they don't like it, they're going to boo them, or they're going to put their hands on their neck, or or whatever.
Start heckling, the worst thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Talk about heckling. Any of these top comics you're talking about, how are they? Were they ever heckled at all? Any of these comics that it could be?
Oh yeah, every comic, even Robin Williams, would get heckled or booed sometime. Nobody's ever had a perfect show career. It's just not possible. But what's great about a professional, and this is really the difference between an amateur and a professional. If an amateur goes up and they're doing material and somebody heckles them, they just freak out, they freeze, or they just run away, right?
Right.
A professional knows how to either bounce the insult back to the audience or deflect it or just absorb it. Depending on the insult, depending on the audience, and depending on the person doing it, a professional can adapt. But all those professionals I mentioned, just like many others that aren't famous, there's a certain reaction to hecklers. There's heckler lines, hey, I don't come to your job and knock the broom out of your hand. There's certain, heckler responses you can get away with. One of the famous ones, somebody would be kind of not paying attention and have their feet up on stage, and the comic will go up and go, hey, are you in show business? No, get your feet off the frickin' stage.
Oh boy! So they're giving them right back, is what they're doing. They're
right. They take it. They know how to deal with it. They don't let them disrupt the entertainment. And again, like a lot of other entertainers, whether it's a ventriloquist, a juggler, a magician, it's all about entertaining the audience the best possible way.
So they have to act like nothing happened and just move right on, and use that against the heckler in such a way that they're not. In other words, the heckler's not getting the best of them. They're not letting them control you. You've got to control the audience.
Yeah, one of the best things that I saw, there was a really good comic. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Dave Coulier that had a heckler, and the guy just wouldn't stop. And so Dave just left the stage, but didn't leave. He went out into the audience and said, you think this is so damn easy? You entertain the audience, and gave the heckler the mic. And the guy tried to be funny and just got booed and heckled himself. And it lasted like 30 seconds. Obviously that person couldn't handle it as well as anybody else. But I thought it was genius that Dave, threw it right in his face and said, you think this is easy? You try it.
So he wasn't able to do it. He embarrassed the heckler. And then he took the microphone and just continued like nothing happened, right?
Right.
There you go.
Funny side story. You got time, Johnny?
Sure, I love your stories. So tell me more.
It was early in his career. It was Gary Shandling was headlining. It was like a Tuesday night. There's maybe 20 people in the audience, and Gary's more than halfway through a set, and a guy in the second row just gets up and leaves for the bathroom. And Gary kind of takes a beat and goes, well, wait a minute. That's way too big a percentage of the audience. I was just about to close my show. And he stood there frustrated for a minute and goes, all right, everybody come with me. And he took the other 19 people down the hall and into the men's room. And this poor guy's at the urinal trying to do his business. And here come 19 men and women all pack into the bathroom. And then Gary stands right behind the guy and without missing a beat goes right back into his material.
Boy, is that clever. Is that clever? That takes
I only saw that once, but I thought it was genius. And I got to tell you, those 20 people, it was a show they would never forget because it was such a unique and special situation. And by the way, Gary was just as funny in the bathroom as he would have been on stage.
Well, he knows how to do it, whether it be doing his business in the bathroom or be on either one, or be on stage.
Yeah. Now, we were very lucky. We got to also work with Elaine Boozler, Lois Bromfield. There was a famous Russian comic, if you remember, in the early 80s, Yakov Smirnoff worked for me when he was just an opening act, and he barely spoke English. He came over from Russia and had to learn English by watching TV. And he was an opening act for me and soon became a regular headliner. And then he opened up for Jay Leno in concert once. And Yakov Smirnoff is another one of those guys that just, even though he was Russian and barely knew the language, knew how to entertain, and he would sing, he would dance, he would tell jokes about Russia, and just an amazing talent. And he went on to get his PhD in psychology and now owns a theater in Branson, Missouri, and he's still performing. So, I mean, and he was, you know, Ronald Reagan, he was like, he wrote Ronald Reagan's speeches, you know, the comedy for some of his speeches back in the day, just incredibly successful back in the mid and late 80s.
That's interesting. That is interesting. I had a comic on my show. I don't know if you've watched some of the other shows. His name was Ed the Machine Regine. He calls it nickname Machine. I don't know if you saw any of that.
I'm sorry I missed that one, Johnny.
Well, you can check it out.
Check it out.
Check it out. He's a friend. I met him on the Royal Caribbean cruise that time, and I bought him a drink. And then what happened was I found out he was hosting over at a comedy club, JNR's Comedy Club in CB Valley. And apparently they have a lot of comics over there and everything. And so I just came to see him, and he was funny. And then I went ahead and had him on.
I got to tell you, Johnny, I'm a little disappointed that that's how you got him as a guest. You didn't buy me a drink.
Well, actually, I wasn't even doing the show at that time, honestly. When I saw him on the cruise, I just bought him a drink. We became friends, and then
I'm just kidding you, man.
No, I know you're kidding. Yeah, of course I'd buy you a drink if I saw you. You know, I was around on a cruise. Of course, I'd buy you a drink. No problem. You're likable, Scott. You are. Oh yeah.
Well, I'm just excited to be on your podcast, and I hope that your audience enjoys some of the stories. And I know they already realize what a talent you are and the great guest you're getting. You're getting a lot of listeners. Congratulations, Johnny.
I appreciate that, Scott. Coming from a big success like yourself, I mean, owning all these, you're a concert producer also. Tell me all about it. How did you get into that? Some of the many concerts that you produced. What's a typical day as a concert producer? Tell me all about all that.
So I've been producing comedy shows in a comedy club. You're doing 8-10 shows a week in a comedy club. When you do a concert, you kind of take that concept and you just go big. But you have to start a couple months ahead because of the promotion and marketing. But it's really a high-risk thing. I had a chance I always admired Bill Graham. Remember Bill Graham? He was the big concert promoter in the Bay Area. He brought in Santana, other big groups, and did big shows. And I was he was like my idol. And so I wanted to do big concerts, but it's a real risk. So you might spend $12,000 and you risk a theater like the Convention Center Theater. You do a bunch of advertising. You book a big name act like Jerry Seinfeld, Yakov Smirnoff, Dana Carvey was one of my regulars, Jay Leno, and then you just hope and cross your fingers that you sell all the tickets and you make some money. Well, I was very lucky, and all my concerts sold out. So I would risk 12,000. I would bring in 22,000, and it was a lot of work and a lot of time. But then you sit back and you realize, well, I made 10 grand in one night. That's pretty good. And if you could do that a couple times a year, that's good extra money for your company, right?
Right.
And what was interesting was a couple years later, I ran into Bill Graham at one of his concerts. And I went up and I introduced myself. I said, hey, I'm Scott from Laughs Unlimited. I'm a concert promoter, but, you know, not like you. You're like, you know, the best ever. And it's just a pleasure to meet you. And he was not nice.
Nope,
It was so funny. He goes, I think you're my competition. And I don't think, I don't think you should be doing shows. And I was like in shock. It was like, here's my hero telling me to, back out of his business. And I'm thinking Sacramento's a good 2 hours from San Francisco. So I wasn't really in his district. But that was my interaction with Bill Graham, but still an amazing guy and historical icon when it comes to concert promotion. But concerts can be a lot of fun, but they're a huge financial risk each and every time.
Talking about concerts, you've heard of Jerry Weintraub. He's the one that promoted Elvis Presley. He said he wanted to get Elvis Presley in Madison Square Garden. He wanted to book him. So he made a deal with Colonel Tom Parker. Colonel Tom Parker said, if you give me $1 million, then you can have Elvis. You heard of that story?
No, but I'm thinking that he probably thought about it. The thing is, you'd have to, as a promoter, what you do is immediately sit down with a calculator and a piece of paper, and you figure out how many seats can you sell out, how much money can you get for each seat, and can I bring in more than $1 million and make a profit? And with Elvis, I would think you could, but it would depend on the size of the venue and the value of the tickets. But did Jerry ever end up doing that show?
He sure did. He was able to get, Tom Parker said, if you can get me by the next day, he made a deal with him, a certified check of $1 million, then you could book Elvis. He was determined, Jerry Weintraub. He said he kept on picturing, that he was booking Elvis, and it said, the bill would say, Jerry Seinfeld presents Elvis Presley. And so he did. He was successful in getting that certified check to, Colonel Tom Parker, and he booked him. And Elvis was in Madison Square Garden, where it was sold out.
Yeah. See, that was a gamble that paid off. But and with Elvis, it's a no-brainer. But when I'm doing Jay Leno and Jerry Seinfeld and Dana Carvey and shows like that, it's a little bit riskier. They're not quite Elvis.
Well, you always take a risk on anything you do, of course. I guess you got to weigh the pros and cons, right?
Exactly.
What's a typical day involved in as a concert producer?
Well, it's a lot of negotiating. I mean, you have to negotiate the rental of the room or the location you're going to do the show. You have to negotiate with the sound and light people. You have to negotiate with the talent. Then you have to put together all the marketing. How much money can you afford to spend without blowing your budget and still get all those butts in the seats? It's a lot of math. It's so funny because, when you're a kid in school, you're thinking, I'll never need this stuff. And then you end up in business and you're going, oh, I better use a calculator and figure this out, right?
What do you think is your best out of all? I don't know how many concerts you produced, but what do you think is your all-time favorite, your best, and what is it about it that made it your best?
Well, I did Jay Leno 3 times, and each time it sold out, but I did also Yakov Smirnoff and Jerry Seinfeld, the Funny Boys, Dana Carvey. I still produce fundraisers and private concerts today, much smaller. I do fundraisers for various charities around Northern California, usually 200-300 people. I have a show coming up in September that'll have 800 people, but I don't do it as much for the money. Now it's to help a charity. And what I do is I take my connections in the world of show business and I try to bring together a show that is not only fun and entertaining, but raises important money for everything from, disabled adults to Rotary to, firefighters. I mean, it's all over the place.
So you fundraise all over. You use your talents and your ability to.
Yeah, it's a lot of, well, as you know, Johnny, in show business, it's a lot of who you know. It's like the guy you met on the cruise ship, and then you had a connection you could get together, right? If you make contacts and you build relationships, in fact, it's not just show business. It's the same in the construction business or the insurance business or restaurant business. You need to build relationships with not only your customers, but with also your vendors or the people you work with. And those relationships are what you bring together to make something happen. In show business, we call it producing a show, but it might be closing a big sale, or it might be opening a new restaurant, or some other big fundraiser. It's all about knowing the right people and knowing who to bring together to make something work.
That makes sense. It's not only how much you know, it's who you know. Connection's important. The right timing and everything.
Exactly. Timing is a lot. I'll tell you another story about timing. I mentioned that one of my favorite regular acts back in the day was Dana Carvey. And a lot of people in your audience may remember him from Saturday Night Live and all the Wayne's World movies. Well, back in the 80s, he was a comic, impressionist, and musician. And he was a featured act and then a headliner at my club. And we hit it off really well. And he worked for me a lot. In fact, one time he brought up his brother's band, and the whole band worked my club for a week. And the closing song was Chopping Broccoli, which is a song he made famous on Saturday Night Live. But with his whole band, it wasn't just him and a guitar. It was all electrified. He had 3 backup singers. It was incredible. And then later on, skip forward a couple of years, we'd had a big show. It was after the show, and Dana and I are sitting in the jacuzzi having some cocktails. And he goes, Scott, I'm excited, but I'm scared. And I go, what? What happened, Dana? And he goes, I just got off the phone with Lorne Michaels, and I'm flying out to New York on Monday to try out for Saturday Night Live. And man, we celebrated that night. It was exciting. I mean, he was a little scared and nervous, but it was a huge step in his career, and he went on to fame and fortune after that.
Wow. Another great comic was Rich Little. I don't know if you ever met him. Rich
Little did not work for me. He was a little up in age by the time my club came along. But you bring up a good point, Johnny. My father had a great sense of humor, and I like to respect that. And he kind of shared that with me, and I wanted to give back to my father. So I don't know if you guys remember Soupy Sales.
Oh, yeah.
Had his own show, and in every show he threw a pie in the face of famous actors and presidents. Well, I had a pie thrown in my face by Soupy Sales. Woohoo!
Really?
Yeah.
Scott, not everybody can say that.
Another great act you may remember from the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, going back to the 60s and 70s, but he was the perennial running for president, Pat Paulson.
Oh, yeah.
Was one of my favorite regulars. He worked my club dozens of times. In fact, we became such good friends. I spent time with him in his ranch in the East Bay area. But Pat Paulson used to come up to my club all the time. And one time he was there when there was a mayor's race on. So what we did is we got a podium set up at the state capitol. We got a limousine. We had guys dressed up like Secret Service. We did this big press release, and we ended up with hundreds of people with banners saying, "Why not Paulson?" And Pat came out like he was going to run for the mayor of Sacramento. It was hilarious.
It's like a comedy political thing combined.
Yeah, it was a great press, whatever you call that.
Like
it was
a press release, or like a promotion, right?
Press promotion, yeah. It was so much fun. And trust me, we made all the TV stations and the newspaper. It was amazing.
That sounds like
Pat Paulson was a great man.
Oh, yeah. I remember Pat Paulson. Yeah. There's a lot of great people out there. What do you
Yeah,
think
no,
about?
it's being on the fringe of show business was very rewarding. One more story. Do you have time, Johnny?
Yeah, I have time. I was going to ask you about. Yeah, you could tell me the story, then I'll ask you about something else. Okay. Yeah, tell me.
So I was talking about my dad's heroes, but there were two people I got a chance to bring in that were my heroes. One was all my friends grew up in the 70s with Monty Python, and
Oh
you may
yeah.
remember the movie The Holy Grail.
Oh yeah.
Well, the star of that and the writer of that was a very funny gentleman out of England by the name of Graham Chapman. And right before he passed away, I had a chance to book him in my club. And he came out and did a whole lecture at my club, talked about hanging out with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and what it was like to make the Holy Grail movie and his partners in Monty Python. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. But then, even more exciting, you may remember one of the biggest comedy groups in the 70s, which is when I was growing up in high school and stuff, was Cheech and Chong, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So the club's going, and all of a sudden I had a chance, and I did it twice. I booked Tommy Chong, and
Really?
it was so funny. He was a great guy off stage. He was mellow, down to earth, easy to work with, but on stage, he was just like he was with Cheech. Man, just straight on comedy, very, very funny. And what was amazing for me as a fan was he closed his show. He'd bring out his electric guitar and play live on stage their famous song. You may remember it, called Earache My Eye. And everybody out there, go look up the song Earache My Eye by Cheech and Chong. And it's dun 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 dun. And he's just ripping this song on stage in my club. And I got goosebumps. That was so exciting.
He was killing that song. It sounds like he was doing phenomenal.
Yeah, it was so much fun to have on my stage.
That sounds like it. Happy memories. Very happy memories.
Yeah.
I was going to mention about, of course, Johnny Carson. When his Tonight Show, everybody, he was the top talk show host. Everybody like him again.
No, Johnny was one of a kind. And what was great about Johnny Carson is he was very secure in his show business life. So unlike some other late night talk show hosts that don't allow funny people on their show because they are afraid to be shown up, Johnny was always welcoming to new young comics, and he helped people like Jay Leno, David Letterman, Ray Romano, Gary Shandling, and many, many others start their career. Sometimes one or two spots on the Tonight Show, and you got a sitcom or you had a future. It was incredible. I was very lucky to meet Johnny a couple times, have a couple autographed items from him.
Really?
And probably the most fun was one time one of my acts was on his show, and we were hanging out backstage with Roseanne Barr and watching the show on the monitor while it was happening live. A great experience to be backstage at the Tonight Show.
You were very fortunate to have met him, Johnny.
Oh yeah, a great, a very special guy.
Oh yeah, Johnny. Well, here's a Johnny Carson joke for you.
Okay.
It's so cold. You say how cold?
How cold?
It's so cold that an Eskimo slid in his tutu into an igloo.
Well, may the fleas of 1,000 camels infest your bed.
That's right. Rich Little used to do great impressions of Johnny Carson. In fact, he did it when they did those comedy roasts. He did it. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, Rich Little was one of the best impressionists. We were lucky enough to work before he became a famous actor. But Kevin Pollak, who has been in a number of movies, just use the Googler and look up his name. Kevin Pollak, very, very famous and talented actor. But back in his stand-up comedy days, he was one of the best impressionists that ever hit my stage. He was incredible.
That's phenomenal. That's great. Yeah, well, Carson started when he was younger. He started as a magician. He's a great Carsoni. I read the book. There's a book about his life, Johnny Carson, about late night, the king of late night. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a lot like Steve Martin. Got his start in magic at the Disneyland. He was working the magic store at Disneyland, and that was his first taste of show business. He would do magic tricks at the magic store at Disneyland when he was a teenager.
That was funny. Steve Martin, too, some of the things he did on Carson. I think he had like a ball. It kept going in and out in his clothes and everything. It was hilarious. I mean, he was something, Steve Martin.
He was crazy and
He's still going.
a little out of control, kind of an early Robin Williams, you know, his first album when he had the arrow through the head and the rubber chicken. I mean, he was very hyper, high energy when he was in his 20s and came out with his first comedy album. But of course, then he matured and started doing movies and of course, lots of fame and fortune.
And like, you know, those skits with Carson used to do, Carnac, the Magnificent, that was really funny. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But him and Ed McMahon made a great team.
Oh yeah, no. It was an incredible show, and it was, you know, I mean, it was on for many years, but it was still sad when it was time.
It was sad. That last final show that he did. Well, he used to do impersonations of Ronald Reagan also. The final show that he did was Bette Midler saying to him, "One for my baby and one for the road." That was sad. That even brought tears to Johnny Carson's eye. He was a sentimental guy, and that was it. The way she sang it, Bette Midler.
Yeah, no, that was an incredible show. In fact, I am such a big fan of the Tonight Show. I own there's a Johnny Carson collection, but I'm an older guy, so my collection's on VHS tapes.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I know they have DVD now, but yeah, VHS was popular in the day. Well, there's a lot of interesting stories. Now, you're, besides a concert producer, you're also a TV. You wear many hats, Scott. You're a TV producer also. Tell me all about your TV production experience. What's a typical day? What are some of the television productions that you have produced? Tell me all about that.
Well, thanks for asking, Johnny. Back in the day, I sometimes did some radio, and once I got my club going, this was before Evening at the Improv or Live at the Comedy Store, but I had my own TV show, but it was only here in Sacramento, called Live at Laughs. And then we did a second series called Laughs Almost Live. And one was on NBC and one was on CBS. Each of them ran about 14 episodes, and they were half-hour stand-up comedy shows. And we got the chance to showcase some famous and a lot of not famous, very funny people here in Sacramento. And I got to tell you, I really enjoyed producing television because when you're behind the scenes, I was the producer, and obviously I've been doing live stage shows, so I knew how to direct and produce a show. But on TV, it's different. And when it came down to the editing booth and the sound and the lighting, it was so much fun because I was learning something new, and yet it was still the same direction and production that I had done with live shows, but only now for TV. But it was very successful. We had a great amount of fun, and a lot of the video that we used for those TV shows can now be seen on the Stand Up Comedy Podcast Network. And so if any of your fans want to look that up, the Stand Up Comedy Podcast Network, there's videos of all these famous people that we've been talking about live on stage from back in the 80s. It's pretty interesting. Right.
Well, that's very interesting. That is interesting. You're a podcast host also. You have a comedy podcast.
So you know, everything we've been talking about, Johnny. I mentioned I've got a little snow on the roof, right? So from 1980 to about 2010, I was doing production of comedy and concerts and fundraisers, but I went off and did different things. And I recently semi-retired, and in my semi-retired state, I really missed the people of comedy, all the comics I used to work with that were friends who I hadn't talked with in 20 years. And so I started a podcast called Stand Up Comedy, your host and MC, because that's how I was introduced every night. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards. So the podcast, which has been out now for about 2.5 years, we have about 75,000 downloads. Wow. It's a combination of live comedy entertainment from back the 80s and 90s, and then current interviews with professional entertainers, some famous, some not so famous. And the combination seems to be really interesting and entertaining for my podcast audience. But thanks for bringing it up, Johnny. I'm having a lot of fun with my podcast.
That's great. What is there about so you just like to talk to all kinds of variety of different comics and people in life, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's, we talk about stand-up comedy, but what's great about comedy as an art form is there's so many vehicles. There's juggling, there's ventriloquism, there's comedy magic, there's straight stand-up, there's comedy writers. I just interviewed Neil Hassman, who was the manager to Famous Comics. I interviewed Bob Fisher, who ran the Ice House for decades. What's great about the business is it's still a community, and being able to talk to all these different people from that comedy community is just so fun. And what's great is I get to share it with the world. I have listeners in England and Australia and India, you name it. It's really fun.
So your podcast goes worldwide. It goes all over. It's something you're telling me.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, it's definitely worldwide and listeners all over the world. Stand-up comedy, or host and MC. It's a lot of fun.
It's great. Now, do you where do you do this podcast? Do you travel to different locations to do your podcast, or just do it at your home, or where do you do it?
Well, most of it's out of my home studio, but I have on several occasions taken a portable studio down to Hollywood, California, and I set up in a hotel room and people come and see me, and we do what are called comedy roundtables, where we have multiple acts sharing stories and making everybody laugh. It's really fun. I did the same thing in the San Francisco Bay Area. A lot of the comics that worked for me back in the day came out of San Francisco. That was a real crucible for stand-up comedy back in the 80s. There was a famous club called the Holy City Zoo that only sat about 28 people and had the stage the size of a postage stamp. But that's where Robin Williams, Dana Carvey, and many, many other people got their start.
Interesting. And what kind of equipment do you need as a podcast host? You have to probably microphones and probably other things. I don't know.
Well, I invested in some equipment. I use a Rodecaster for my recording, so I have sound effects. I can control the volume. I use a professional mic. And when I do the portable, I have a series of mics that all fit into the Rodecaster, and then the Rodecaster can record onto a mini disc, and that's what I use to edit. It is something that's really been great to do, to get out and see people in person, but sometimes it's not possible. There's a very talented comic out of San Francisco. Your audience may remember him. He was one of the writers and performers for the Marijuana Diaries, excuse me, and he now lives and is a huge star in Australia. But I couldn't go to Australia to interview him, so we did that over the phone, and it came out really good. His name's Arj Barker. So if you get a chance, your audience can go to the Googler, look up Arj Barker, very talented comic, a big star, done a lot of TV in Australia, but he started right here in Northern California and was nice enough to let me interview him for my shows.
That's interesting. What do you think about the comedy clubs that have been out? You know, there's the Laugh Factory, there's the Improvisation, there's the Comedy Store, there's one in Pasadena, what is the Ice House? There's all kinds of different comedy venues. What do you think about those places and everything?
Well, the professional clubs, of course, I think of as peers, because their goal is to bring non-professional and professional entertainers in, and as I mentioned earlier on, be like a training ground to give people an opportunity to hone their art form, to learn their comedy, and help them write and perform. But there's the Laugh Factory, there's Ha-Ha's, there's the Comedy Castle. I mean, almost anything you can think of. The Laugh Stop, the Comedy Stop.
Right.
Yeah, Laughs Unlimited, by the way, was mine. So that was early on.
Right, that was yours. That's right. These other ones are ones that came later. Improvisation is another one. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Improv in New York was actually one of the first. And then when Mitzi Shore and her husband split up, she got the club in Hollywood. He got the club in New York. Both called the Comedy Store. And then that's the comedy. It was the Improvisation in New York became the Comedy Store in L.A. And then Bud Friedman opened up the Improv on Melrose in L.A. in Hollywood. And those were kind of the main first clubs. As I mentioned, in San Francisco, though, there was a whole new comedy world building with clubs like Cobb's and the other cafe and the Holy City Zoo and the Punchline. So once the 80s got going, there were clubs popping up all over the country. Like I said, when I opened, I was the 12th full-time club in the country, but by 1985, it was like Starbucks. They were on every corner.
Wow. There used to be, it's no longer, it's out of business now, but there used to be a club in Encino called LA Cabaret. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, I remember the cab.
Yeah, I had actually, she's no longer alive, but when I had I had a Hawaii special, the Gong Show. It said, a tribute to Johnny Blaze. Like I said, Elvis's Aloha Hawaii. You remember in '73, before he passed, that was all over the world. And so my Hawaii special, it felt like Elvis and the Beatles. I mean, I was doing blue suede shoes, and there was hugging, kissing, screaming, lipsticks in the face, cheering, and applauding. It's phenomenal. You can see that on JohnnyBlaze.com also. As Elvis went out in the audience, the International Hotel, he went out and kissed the women, love me tender and everything. And there was a guy on it. What are you doing, sir? And yeah.
Well, Johnny, I mean, that fame and fortune goes with you. I mean, I think I see a hickey on you.
Oh, hickey. Oh, no, there's no hickey. Well, maybe. I know what you're saying. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. That you can see, like I said, JohnnyBlaze.com. But the lady who was on that special, he was a comedian by the name of Pam Madison. She's no longer alive.
Oh, Pam Madison's very funny and very talented comedian. She's done a lot. And
she gave me her leg on that Hawaii special and everything. But when I saw her in person, she had a used car salesman with her. And anyway, she called me a has-been. I probably said I should have said that's a compliment. If you're a has-been, once you were, you can become again successful. I didn't say that. I just see what I did, because the comedians put you down to boost themselves up. So I just high-fived and said, "You're right." She wasn't right, but I just said that because I don't want to get her heckling me, harassing me. But anyway.
Well, also, I don't know what mood she was in that night, and I'm sorry that she treated you that way. There's usually more respect amongst performers, right. But sometimes people that are trying to look forward have difficulty respecting and understanding the past. And, that's the Elvis, like the Beatles, like the Stones. Of course, they're still out there petrified. But these, I enjoy looking back and accepting the fact that all that talent was the foundation of what we're doing today. But sometimes younger entertainers don't have that wisdom.
Well, I want to say this much is you got to keep, even if you try, let's say, to audition for something big and you don't get a call back, that doesn't mean you don't have talent. It just means that you were not what they were looking for. But if one door closes, another door can open up.
No, and that's been proven over and over in show business that just like sales, you're going to get 10 no's for one yes, but that one yes could make your career.
That's right. You look at some of these shows. America's Got Talent. There's X Factor. There's The Voice. All those American Idol. And they bring out talent, but they don't go for everybody, and it's competitive. And America's Got Talent. They're looking for a story to get attention, and they have to be a special type of talent.
Right. No, but it's still. But the point is, hopefully they respect the stage because it's giving an opportunity to be seen. And whether you're the pants guy or tape face, and
right.
your talent might be different and unique, you still have to respect that your job is to entertain.
That's true. Like Ricky Nelson said, the garden party, if you can't please everybody, please yourself. You're not going to please everybody. And
exactly.
You can't. Oh yeah, they were going to throw rotten eggs at him, and because he wasn't singing his earlier hits at Madison Square Garden, so that's what he came up with, Ricky Nelson, that song, and that was cute. It was a big hit, and never forget that.
No, he got the last laugh. That sold a couple million copies.
Oh yeah, that did very well. Yeah, a lot of the music, I think a lot of the music sometimes from the past, I think, are a lot better than what they have now. They don't make them like they used to.
Well, and it's easy to say that because we've been blessed with seeing some of the greats, but you have to try to be open to new aspects of entertainment. So I'm not a big fan of some of the new music or rapping, but it doesn't matter what I think. It's the audience as a whole. the people that buy the tickets, the 20-somethings, the 30-somethings, maybe even the 40-somethings, what do they want to hear? What do they want to see? Because they're the ones that are going to buy the tickets. I mean, at my age, I don't go out to a lot of concerts, so there's no performer trying to sell me a ticket.
I see. Well, you're busy doing your podcast amongst other things, so I don't think you have the interest or the time to see it, but that's all right. You're a happy camper. You're doing what you want to do.
Exactly.
You love what you're doing, so you love what you're doing, and you have a lot of interest.
Hey, if you love what you work, if you love what you do, you're not working a single day, something like that. There's some phase. Bill knows it.
Well, you do have a personality about you, that you do, Scott. I was going to ask you also, now you teach an online course also for comedy, right? Tell me about it.
I wrote a book back in the 80s called Be a Stand-Up Comic or Just Look Like One. And it really covers what's important to learn to go from amateur to professional, and really the difficulties and the hurdles you'll have to reach. The first half of the book is kind of brutal. It's telling you the hard parts about being in show business. But if you get past the halfway point, it starts sharing some of the secrets to help overcome those hurdles. And what I did is I turned that book into an online course. I got a couple for professional comics to add their 2 cents. And it's available on my website, scottscomedystuff.com. And that online course is designed for somebody. I'm not going to teach somebody how to be funny. That's not my job. As a producer, I'm trying to teach people that if you are funny or think you're funny, what do you need to do to take it to the next level?
I see. Well, in other words, yeah, you never were a stand-up comedian yourself. That's what you mentioned. But because of your
I was a
experience
producer. I have a good sense of humor. I know what's is needed to entertain an audience. And I emceed all my shows for over 21 years. And some people have thought I was funny, but I never wrote a joke. I worked the audience. I engaged with the audience. And as a producer, I helped formulate young talent into successful talent. And that's my role.
We have a lot to be proud of. Those are very positive and exciting experiences, Scott, that's for sure. And you have a book. Now, there's a book also about 20 questions to become a comic. Wasn't there some type of
Well, that's my new book. Thanks for asking, John. I didn't know you were going to do that. I just wrote a book. It came out in December. It's available on Amazon. It's called 20 Questions Answered About Being a Stand-Up Comic. And it's kind of a short version of the comedy course. It's 20 situations and advice that will help get you through those situations. Again, to take somebody that might think they're funny or wants to be an amateur comic or go pro, these are the advice, these are the suggestions from a producer with over 40 years experience that might help you make that step. So 20 Questions Answered About Being a Stand-Up Comic, available on Amazon, is something to give people that leg up in show business. That doesn't mean it's going to make you funny or make you a millionaire, but it definitely will teach you something. And it's on sale now, so go get it.
Okay, that's a great commercial. That's a great promotion for your book. That's why I thought I'd bring it up. I mean, that's part of what we do on this show. I like to promote
You're
people.
doing a great job, Johnny. Anything else you want to plug?
Is there anything else that you'd like to plug, Scott?
Oh, no, I'm here to entertain your audience and make sure that Johnny Blaze is remembered for his karate moves and his podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're a great, awesome audience. You're fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Those experiences I had were phenomenal. They really were. Oh, yeah. By the way, I was wondering, have you ever met, or did you ever meet or know Jimmy Kimmel?
No, I don't know Jimmy Kimmel. He was kind of the next generation. As I was getting out of the business, he was kind of just getting into it, and we never crossed paths. Are you a big fan of Jimmy Kimmel?
Jimmy's a good, yeah, I like Jimmy. I met Jimmy before he made it big in the business. Jimmy was working for KROQ, and Jimmy's a sports guy on the Kevin and Bean show on the radio. And he handed me his card. It said Jimmy Kimmel KROQ. He said, I'll promote you on the radio. Well, I called Jimmy up. And I called and called. I couldn't get a hold of him for anything. I guess he's forgotten about me. When I least expected, I got a call from one of their casting people saying, we like your video, Jimmy Kimmel Live. I said, what video? I didn't send you a video. He said, well, We share Steve Harvey's office. So it was his first year in 2003 when his first very year as a talk show host. You know, he's been doing it for 19 years now. Anyway, the minute I arrived in Hollywood, he greeted me, Jimmy. He said, "I know you." And when it was over, he said, "It's a pleasure meeting the star of the feature." So the song was, it was a Christmas song called Jingle Bell Rock. You could see that also on JohnnyBlaze.com.
Awesome.
Doing karate.
Congratulations. How fun for you to have those memories.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Actually, I have an idea to try to get back on this fall. I'm going to pursue it. We'll see what happens. My producer said he overheard Bill. He said he overheard Jimmy on the say, "I wonder what happened to those Future Star Talent Showcase people." But that's before the pandemic came about, and the COVID-19. So they forgot about it apparently. So yeah.
You know what? We need to be that squeaky wheel and remind them.
Right. So I do have an idea, and we're going to pursue it. And it either works or it doesn't. But it's like anything. If you don't do anything, you don't have a chance. And if you do,
if there's anything that I've tried to teach people in my over 12 companies started in the seat of the pants entrepreneur that I am, that if there's something that you want, you have to go after it, and you have to be smart about it and talk to people in the industry that you're interested in, whether it's a plumber or a musician. Talk to people that are doing that work, learn from them, glean information and advice, and then when you go out, you've got that momentum.
Right. Well, I remember when I used to deal with managers and agents, they weren't the nicest bunch of people. They're very rude, disrespectful. They were interested in one thing only, money, and did not seem to care about their clients that much. It's what you can do for me, not what they can do for you.
Yeah, that's pretty common in Hollywood, but mostly
right.
For agents. I just interviewed Neil Hassman, who was a manager to a lot of the stars, including Ryan O'Neal and many others. And he really cared about his people. I think what makes a difference between a manager and an agent is that they do have more of a connection with their talent. Agents are kind of guys that just book people like this week's meet, right? Whereas a manager is taking on that person almost like a mentee relationship. They're there to guide them, advise them, and help their career.
So I'm not dealing with that.
They're usually nicer is my point, Johnny.
Yeah, so my producer and I, we work together as a team. And we make a great team together, him and I. That's for sure.
Good.
I do the talent, he does the technical. So that's
that's the way to do it.
He's my Ed McMahon is what he is. He puts out the Facebook, he puts out YouTube. We do the practices together and the jokes, and he puts it together and we promote and we spin ideas off each other and practice and give it our all.
He's doing a great job. I saw some of the promotion for tonight's show, so tell him I said thanks.
You're certainly welcome, Scott. I was promoting you all week, like I told you. I was excited about this show, and I did give you quite a few shares on Facebook with your name and your smiling face on there, of course.
Good. Are we about to start?
Yeah, we're just getting started. That's for sure, Scott. No, I'm joking with you. No, anyway, no, you're easy to talk to. That's you are, Scott. And you're fun. And you have some very interesting stories and wonderful experiences. There is something. Let's see. I wanted to say if there's anything. There was something else. There's something else I was trying to think of.
Well, let me tell you the excitement of owning a submarine.
Owning a submarine?
Yeah, I owned a submarine.
You really owned a submarine? Oh, really? Tell me about that.
Yeah. I had a lot of money. I apparently wanted to throw it away. And some friends of mine, I helped them launch a submarine in Hawaii. And I go, I got to have one of those. And I launched the Nautilus 4 in Monterey Bay. And it was a big, beautiful submarine. We were doing tourist rides. We were showing people the kelp forest and the otters, sea otters, and the sea lions and all the great fish. And there's a big problem. In Hawaii, the water's crystal clear. In Monterey Bay, because of the coldness, there was a lot of what's called algae bloom. So I had to pay a scuba diver to go along with the submarine and clean the windows so the tourists could see things. Well, long story short, I lost my ass on that, Johnny. I only owned it for about a year and a half, but I owned a submarine and it was a lot of fun, lost a buttload of money, and then ended up selling that to the Wrigley Gum family, and that submarine still operates today out of Catalina Island.
That's the Nautilus Scott Edwards story. Wow, what a story.
Well, you know, they can't all be winners.
Right. No, that's true. There's Edwards is a common name. I'm sure you're not related. There's a John Edwards is a psychic. I don't think you're related to him. No.
Wait a minute.
Maybe John Edwards?
No, I'm not getting anything.
No, there was also Ralph Edwards. He's no longer alive.
Ralph Edwards was quite famous. Yeah, he was quite the guy.
That's correct.
But no, I'm not related. I'm the only showbiz kook in my family.
Okay. So it's not all in the family. You're the only one that does what you do. There's nobody else that's involved in show business, what you're doing.
Yeah. No. My brother's in prison and my sister reads auras. So we're all different.
How about your wife? How did you two meet?
Oh, my wife. Well, I joke that I raised her as one of my own. She came to work for me when she was 20 years old and started off as a hostess. And 20 years later, she co-owned the company.
Wow. She made the right decision with you.
Well, I'm sure she has her doubts from time to time, but yeah, no, she worked for me for many years. She was a talented employee. She ran some of my restaurants, many things, but I was single for most of it. And then we started kind of hanging out as friends, and we dated almost 15 years. And as of a couple months ago, we've been married 22 years now. So it's been a long relationship.
Congratulations on that. What does she do now?
Oh, she's in law enforcement. We can't talk about it.
Well, we can't discuss it. Okay.
Yeah, she's a spy. If I tell you, I have to kill you.
That's secret. Certain things you can't talk about, that's for sure. No, here you go. Let me ask you, Scott, if you had to do anything over again in your life, in your career, would you do anything differently?
Well, you know, looking back, I've made my share of mistakes, and you wish you could change things. But really, the wisdom of age teaches you that good things and bad things have to happen is what helps you mature and helps make you what you are. So even though, yes, I would go back and maybe treated somebody different or made a different decision, or maybe not bought a submarine and saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. But still, I don't regret any of it, because the submarine's a great example. I lost my ass, but it was so much fun. And my kids got to, you know, see me, you know, they helped drive the submarine. They saw me drive the submarine. We owned a submarine. I mean, even though I lost a ton of money, it's an experience that very few people, if anybody else, has had, and I have that forever, right? So I wouldn't change it, even though it might have been a big financial mistake. It was still an exciting aspect of my life, much like owning comedy clubs or construction companies or spinning disco back in the day.
That's right. When you did a disco, you were a DJ, or what was?
I was a head DJ at the #1 disco here in Sacramento. I was also the head bouncer. I'm kind of a big guy, 6'2", and have a little weight on me, and nobody messes with me. So I was a bouncer and a head DJ, but it was great was I turned my company called Sounds Good Music, and we weren't just spinning records and running the door at clubs. We were selling the equipment and the dance floors to other restaurants and clubs, and creating more discos. So we started before Saturday Night Fever came out, the movie with Travolta. But after that movie came out, disco just exploded, and boy, we were right there, and sold a lot of equipment, set up a lot of discos.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was great fun, because I was maybe 20 at the time. You know, I wasn't even old enough to be in the clubs I was spinning records in.
Wow!
Don't tell anybody.
No spoiler alert. You also restaurant. Did you manage restaurants or own restaurants?
I owned a couple of restaurants. I was making so much, you know, when you own a comedy club, it's not just a comedy club, it's a bar and a restaurant, because you have to serve food and drinks, right? So I knew about the restaurant business. Plus, as a kid, I was a busser and a waiter in some restaurants. And in fact, my first job ever at age 15 was in a pizza parlor. So I started young. But once I had some money in my pockets and the clubs were doing well, I have a kind of a secret barbecue restaurant, and I opened up a barbecue rib joint called Sticky Fingers. And we had live Dixieland jazz. We had shootouts in the street in front of the restaurant. It was a lot of fun, kind of a Western theme. And then I love jazz and music, and Sacramento has beautiful summer nights. So I opened up a place called The Art of Pasta, and it was a family dining restaurant that served pasta dishes, spaghetti and fettuccine and stuff like that. But what's great about it was that it had a big outdoor courtyard, and I built a stage, and I'd have live jazz 6 nights a week. And I just loved, on the Sacramento nights, I get done with work and I go over and listen to some live jazz and have a cocktail. It was amazing times.
That's great. Thanks for sharing those positive, exciting experiences.
Oh, and restaurants are a really tough way to go. I did end up selling both those restaurants, but it was a lot of fun and great experience, and had great staff at the time. In fact, as I mentioned, my then employee, soon to be girlfriend, soon to be wife, was one of the managers for Sticky Fingers. And we were just joking about it today. I said, hey, do you want to open another rib restaurant? And she goes, well, let's see what the third Mrs. Edwards says about that.
The third one, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, one. I think you're going to be more. No, I don't think so.
No, I'm done.
I know, you're done. That's enough. You're a happy camper. Scott Edwards, you have had and continue to have a very exciting, rewarding, successful, and fun life, a blazing and amazing life. You really do. You wear many hats and do so many things. You're very interesting. That you are.
Oh, well, thanks, Johnny. Coming from you, a man of many talents, that's appreciated. Thank you.
Whether you're a concert producer, a comedy club owner, a television producer, a writer, you name it, you've done it.
Yeah, and don't forget a podcaster, just like you.
Yes, all right, a comedy podcast too, of course. That's correct. All kinds of things. Yep, you're a man of many, many talents and many experiences.
Well, let's keep that quiet. But thanks, Johnny, and I just appreciate the opportunity to be on your show and getting a chance to work with the famous, original Johnny Blaze.
You're certainly welcome, Scott. I want to ask, before we wrap it up, I do wanted to ask you a few more things. Do you have any present projects, Scott?
Yeah, I'm working on, I've gotten pretty proficient at podcasting. I was recently approached by the city. I live near a city called Elk Grove, which is a bedroom neighborhood to Sacramento. It's south of Sacramento. It's a town of about 150,000. And I'm working with the city to put together a shop local business-to-business podcast just for Elk Grove. And that's supposed to launch in October. And it's an opportunity to interact with my community and support small business.
Oh, that sounds like fun. That sounds like a great rewarding experience.
Well, when we're podcasters like you learn things that other people don't understand. And if I can share what, podcasting is a lot like radio, right? So if I could share those marketing skills with other small businesses and help them grow by helping them engage with the residents of Elk Grove, it's a win-win-win, right?
That's right. You're helping them and they're helping you. Everybody wins out there. That's right. Do you have any future dream projects, Scott, that you haven't done yet that you're really thinking of doing in the future?
Well, I'm getting up there in years. I'm semi-retired, and as I've mentioned, I've done everything I've really wanted to do. When I wanted to do something, I found a way to give it a try. So luckily, I'm blessed to say, Johnny, that I've had that opportunity, that I've owned just about every kind of business I'd want to own, and have great memories and great experiences that I'm able to share through podcasts like yours. So other than helping my town of Elk Grove and its small business people, for me, that's enough of a goal right now. And if something comes after that, keep in mind, I'm still promoting, I'm still doing fundraisers for charities and stuff, but those things keep me pretty busy.
Sounds like it. Maybe you'll do a documentary called The Scott Edwards Story. That's just an idea for right now. Yeah.
Well, if you got a dime and a cup of coffee, you might be there.
You never know.
Right.
Oh, really? Your years of experience as a comedy club owner, an entire thing all about your life and entertainment. It'd be very entertaining. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're certainly welcome. Welcome. It's just an idea. You never know. You never know.
Hey,
Okay.
I'll be waiting for that phone call from producer Johnny Blaze when he's ready to produce his documentary.
I thought of a funny movie, but I can't produce or direct it. That's not because I don't do that. But you know how people, when they try to get the agents and managers, how difficult it can be. It became kind of like a comedy. How to get rejected without even trying.
That is so true. Rejection's a big part of the process.
That's another thing I
Johnny.
did want to, before we wrap up, I did want to real fast, I wanted to ask you about that. How have you ever had a time where, two things, you ever had a time where you tried to make a show successful and nothing worked? How did you handle it? And also, how did you ever handle it? Nothing was perfectly smooth. I'm sure you had your share of some rejected too. How were you able to handle those times, those circumstances?
Well, much like we talked about with professional entertainers, whether you're a comic or an actor or a singer, we all have to learn how to accept a no or criticism. Some handle criticism better than others. I've been good at it a few times. I've been bad at it a few times. And of course, I've had business opportunities that have crashed and burned. I told you about the money lost on the Submarine. There's been other small projects. The books I write are self-published. I don't have anybody handing me any money to share my knowledge. I put it out there myself. There are, I think, if there's a lesson to leave your listeners with, that there are only certain opportunities that are made available to you during life. And some people are afraid and don't take that opportunity, and they end up regretting it the rest of their life. I'm the kind of personality that I went after every opportunity that was presented to me. And if I failed, at least I didn't have any regrets that I didn't try. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that's true. If you don't try at all, you don't have a chance. That's it.
Right.
If you try, it either works or it doesn't. But if you don't,
Right.
if you give up, that's it. You are finished. So you don't want to give up. And I will leave you. I have a poem I created. I think it's kind of unique. Dealing with positive thinking. Positive thoughts make you hot. Negative thoughts make you rot. So be hot. Don't rot, or else you'll go to pot, and you'll lose a lot, and you won't do a big job.
Good job, Johnny. Yeah, they ought to put that on a plaque.
Thanks, guys. I thought you'd like that. I thought the audience would like it again. Yeah, I've shared it before. Anyway, what I was gonna. Okay, so if people want to find out more about you, Scott, tell me all the different areas. The entertainment website, Facebook, YouTube channel, maybe IMDb page, Twitter, Spotify. Any of the different links. Tell me about different links that you're.
Well, my podcast, Stand-Up Comedy, Host and MC, is available on all directories. As you mentioned, Apple, Spotify, Pandora, iHeart. It goes on and on. Feel free to look it up and check it out. There's a combination of great interviews of professional talent and a showcasing of live comedy taped on my stage that is very, very funny. So that's Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. And there's a website, scottscomedystuff.com. I got to tell you, Johnny, a very fancy name, scottscomedystuff.com. And on that site, you can find my podcast, my books, my online course, and any information. If you'd like to contact me, of course, Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, is available on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and, all that kind of stuff. But go to the website. That's the easiest. Most important, I'm proud to be a podcaster, and sharing this time with you, Johnny, was really incredible. I know your listeners appreciate everything you do and the entertainment you bring to them. So thank you for having me on your show.
Scott Edwards, it's been a complete pleasure. The time has gone by very fast. I found it most interesting, and I'm sure that my audience, hopefully my audience, felt the same. You have been blazing and amazing and awesome and a lot of fun with a wealth of experience and great stories, and you do it all. And thank you again for being such a great, wonderful, and awesome guest, Scott Edwards.
Oh, thank you, and let's just hope Bill's kind to me in the editing room.
I'm sure he will be. Anyway, and wrapping up the show, Scott, I just want to say for all my fans and friends, always keep a smile on your face and a song in your heart. And until next time, happy trails and blaze out.
Ladies and gentlemen, If you would like to be a guest on a Zoom entertainment talk show, please send us an email, an amazing, original jbshow@gmail.com. And don't forget, every show will appear on YouTube and Facebook. We get over 3,000 views per episode, and all our guests get a complimentary DVD of their appearance on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Amazing Original Johnny Blaze Show. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the amazing original Johnny Blaze has just left the building. Mwah. Good night. God bless and thank you. Bye-bye.